Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for an incredible presentation on what it means to be a global citizen. My name is Tanya Sadowski. I am the program coordinator for the Global Engagement Department at the Community Solution Education System, and I'm really, really excited to be wrapping up an incredible International Education Week with this presentation. A little bit about International Education Week. It's a time that we take each year to recognize and celebrate the benefits of international education and global exchange. A joint initiative of the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Department of Education, universities and institutions around the globe are encouraged to create and participate in events around International Education Week that promote global initiatives. For what we had this week, this is our last one, but this is what we've had this week. And I want to mention that all of our sessions are recorded. So if you are interested in watching any of these, if you were unable to attend them, please visit our YouTube channel and go to our International Education Week 2025 playlist, and you will be able to watch all of the videos from this week. But just a little recap on what we had going on. On Monday, we had a presentation from some faculty and students on the interdisciplinary approaches to the study abroad experience, innovations, impact, and inspiration. On Tuesday, we had a presentation, Ubuntu to Aloha, ECCE's Global Playbook for Connecting Cultures, Care, and Well-Being. On Wednesday, we had a dynamic student panel on the study abroad experience. Yesterday on Thursday, we had a presentation from some faculty members and an NGO founder on Educate to Empower E-Academy, Breaking the Cycle of Poverty Through Education. Earlier today, on Friday, I presented on our Global Distinction program and gave an overview of that program and showed everybody how to apply for that program. And finally, what we have here and what you are all here for is what does it mean to be a global citizen? So again, if you have any interest in looking at any of these videos and the recordings, they are on our YouTube playlist. I also want to remind everybody that we do have a Spotify playlist that you can contribute to. We want to hear music that inspires you, either from your international travels, maybe you've lived internationally, something that just reminds you of home or your travels or that is inspirational. Please feel free to contribute to our Spotify account and let us enjoy music from all over the world together. A few tips before we begin the presentation today. Please do mute yourselves throughout the presentations. Feel free to use the chat box and reactions throughout. We will have a lot of time for Q&A sessions with the speakers. We also request your patience with technology. We always try to do our best, but in case there are any issues, as I mentioned, all presentations are recorded and available after the session on our YouTube channel. And without further ado, just a reminder, you are here once again for the presentation, What Does It Mean to Be a Global Citizen? I will now stop sharing my screen and I will hand it over to Lilith. Lilith, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Oh. And if everybody could see that okay, just throw up a yes in the chat or a thumbs up, whoever's on screen. So welcome to this session of What Does It Mean to Be a Global Citizen? I'd like to introduce my colleagues here, Marthew Solomon, Megan Graves, and somewhere I believe Pooja should be joining us soon. Oh, there she is. Yay. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into it since we have limited time. I want to leave time for folks that may have questions. So we're going to start off with Megan. Megan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Megan Graves. It's such a pleasure and privilege to be gathered with you all today online. I was invited by Lilith to join this beautiful panel, and I do anything for Lilith, so whatever she says goes. But it's just a real honor to be with you all today. Lilith just asked us to share some of our experiences abroad and or locally, and thinking with a global vision and heart. And as you can just see from some of the photos here, these are just a few of my experiences. I also studied abroad in undergrad. I went to Dominican University in River Forest, Illinois. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, from the south side of Chicago. And so I had traveled when I was younger with family, but really being immersed really happened in undergrad. And I just really had beautiful experiences with students and faculty alike traveling abroad. Some places that really close to my heart. I had the privilege of visiting Accra, Ghana, when I was an undergrad, and that was quite a beautiful experience for me. When I was in undergrad, I struggled quite a bit with identity politics, and just for me as a Black woman in the United States, just trying to understand that reality and really just trying to understand myself and those around me and the systems that I had to navigate. And going to Ghana, going back to the motherland, as many people say, really just struck a chord with me to just see people who looked like me everywhere. And there was just no question of feeling unsafe or feeling out of sorts. It really just felt like coming home. And so that was a really beautiful experience for me. I also wanted to share another experience that I've had. I was attending World Youth Day in Rio de Janeiro in 2013 with an organization called Catholics on Call. We were advocating for LGBTQIA Catholics and to advocate and to be seen and to just let the church know that we were there. And so being in Rio was another beautiful experience because we met young pilgrims from all around the world, whether it was from Germany or whether it was from Mexico, just anyone, everyone was there. We just had beautiful experiences with them because we knew that we were all there for a purpose of just celebrating our faith, but at the same time, also seeing the beauty in cultural differences. There was one particular experience as that I want to share, and not to ramble, but we were invited into a home with a queer couple, and they cooked dinner for us. And I won't forget this because it was a Brazilian delicacy dish. And it reminded me a lot of a meal that my grandmother would cook at home. And we just made that like diasporic connection. I was like, my grandma just made it was like a meal with like meats and beans and like different types of like greens. And so I said, my grandma just made this like a few weeks ago. And she was like, yeah, it's a Brazilian delicacy. And, you know, we just talked about the history of just the colonization in Brazil, enslavement in Brazil, and just talking about Afro-Brazilians and just what they go through daily in their communities in Brazil, and like different police occupations and things like that. And so we just really connected in that sense that like a dish could really open up a dialogue about history and social justice and things like that. So that was really impactful for me. Lastly, I also visited Haiti when I was in undergrad, a few years after the major earthquake that occurred some years back. And so we worked with an organization called Wings of Hope. We worked with young students and kids who were abandoned by their families due to their physical and mental disabilities and being differently able-bodied. And so we did a lot of equine therapy with the children, and we also just cared for them for the several weeks that we were there, partnering with this organization. And that was also a really beautiful moment because just to see kids in such an environment that really there wasn't a lot of resources for them, but they just made the best of it. And there was I was so encouraged by all of the children and their strength, and at the same time just meeting all of the staff that works with this organization. They really just opened my eyes to really caring for one another and what it means to really open yourself up to people and to trust one another and to really trust that we can all care for each other and no matter what situation, no matter where we come from. So that was a beautiful experience as well. And yeah, that was just really impactful for me because it was very humbling. I think I think a lot about some of the experiences I've had, and it's super humbling. You feel like a really small dot in the world, and just it's a very powerful feeling to know that you are part of something greater than yourself when you go abroad in a way that you're not coming from a colonial lens or intentions of wanting to take something over, but to work with those who have already been there. I think a lot about Haiti in particular. When we were traveling there, there were groups of people who were going there to serve, obviously, with like matching T-shirts and everything and bright colors. I remember sitting next to a lovely woman on the plane, and she said, "Oh yeah, it's just so those, the folks are just, it's just so devastating, and I just feel so bad for them." I said, "Well, don't feel bad for them." I said, "Haiti is one of the first countries to liberate themselves from enslavement. So there's such a beautiful history there." And so just talking with people and to just letting folks know that wherever you go, know that people have been there long before you came, and they honor and acknowledge that history, acknowledge the power in that, and the power in those who you encounter when you go abroad. So
Thank you, Megan. Ah, there we go. Marthew.
All right. Hello, everybody. Really, really honored to be here with you all. My name is Marthew Solomon. I am born and raised in Los Angeles, where I still reside. I'm currently in the PhD program for transformative social change at Saybrook. My master's is in public administration with an emphasis on sustainable communities. And in addition to that, I'm a documentary filmmaker. And my documentaries are rooted in social justice, in humanity, in care, in centering the voices and the stories of people who are most affected by the oppressive systems that we are embedded in at the moment. And all of this goes back to my upbringing in Los Angeles. And so, I was raised in West Hollywood, and I had what I later discovered was a very unique experience of going to very integrated schools, very diverse schools. And so my friends were Black and Chicano and Asian, Muslim. I was raised Jewish. I had Christian friends, Hindu friends, Sikh friends. And so at an early age, even though we were being taught in school that we're all, treated equally and fairly, I observed, and it was shared with me from my friends, that this wasn't the lived experience of everybody. And so, at a young age, I didn't have the words to put to that. When I went to college, I was a music student, but I started taking sociology classes and anthropology classes because I wanted to understand, why is it like this, and why were we told one thing, but my friends are experiencing different things. And so, literally, I was in sociology 101 in the early 90s, learning about systemic racism and putting the label to that in the wake of the Rodney King beating and the LA riots. And then later on, there was the Rampart scandal and things with LAPD and all of that. And so, um, at the time, I was like, oh, wow, systemic racism. One of my professors said that the rules and laws in a society are created by the people in power to keep them in power. And so, as a 20-something-year-old, I was like, great, if everybody knew this, we could end racism tomorrow, and everybody would be fine. And that didn't happen. And you cut to 20 something years later, in 2013, Trayvon Martin was murdered and George Zimmerman was acquitted. And I had this moment of, how are we still doing this? And then all through the 20 teens, and Mike Brown and Eric Gardner and Sandra Bland, and the procession of hashtags as Dr. Jody Armour has called that. And then we got to George Floyd, in 2020. And so at the time, again, I was like, how are we still doing this? Why is this still happening? And that's when I chose to go back to school. And so through my master's degree program, uh, I started learning about abolition and learning about systems of care and divesting and rejecting systems of punishment, the carceral system, policing, all based on racial hierarchies and class hierarchies and uh, profits over people and things like that. And reading Mariame Kaba and Alex Vitale and Angela Davis and Huey P. Newton and learning about abolition and how there are these systems of care, systems of accountability, systems where people get their needs met, where people are taken care of, where there's free health care and mental health support available, and how those are the things that actually reduce what we label as crime. And crime is a label that's applied that changes a lot depending again on who's in power. And so out of my master's program, I directed the documentary Reimagining Safety, which is on alternatives to policing. And I've been traveling the country for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, doing community screening. So partnering with over 130 social justice, mental health, community organizations in over 50 cities. We just had our 102nd screening this past weekend here in Los Angeles. And then from there, after October 7th, 2023, the uprising by the Palestinian resistance, and starting to unpack what is Zionism, what is anti-Zionism, and how is the Israeli military connected to U.S. policing via tactics and weapons and surveillance and our cop cities, which there are at least 85 cop cities that are built or are in the process of being built across the United States, which they trade tactics and weapons and funding with Israel and the United States. So gaining a larger global consciousness for the things that, frankly, the Black Panthers and La Raza and indigenous liberation movements have been telling us for decades, which is the imperial boomerang and how U.S. colonialism and imperialism abroad is also practiced and enacted, and harm is caused here, and how it's all interconnected. And so, through my travels, most of my international travel was pre-2020, pre-COVID. But traveling across the United States and being in community with folks who are doing transnational work and global work, and interacting virtually with folks in other countries has really given me a broader understanding and a deeper understanding of how really interconnected we are. And so whether it's 6 miles down the road to South Central Los Angeles, or 3,000 miles, to Atlanta or Newark, New Jersey, or to other continents and other countries, it's really our humanity that connects us and binds us. And when we meet each other at that level, then that's when true transformation can emerge. So thank you.
Thanks, Marthew. Pooja, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Lilith. Hi, this is Pooja Das, and it's my honor and privilege to be here amongst all of you. So, as you can see in my photos, that I graduated from the Chicago School last year with a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. So, my journey as a student, it was like I already had previous master degrees in English literature, education, as well as psychology. But the thing is, like, when I came here to United States in 2021 as a dependent, I got tied up with all the immigration's rule, and I was not allowed to work. So in that context, I thought of why not I go into academics and nurture myself and get a degree which will help me to establish myself here and get myself an identity. Because in the present world, I feel having your own identity is one of the most important thing for not only women but for everyone. So I don't generally use like the term woman, because I feel that we all are equal, and education, equal rights are for everyone, for every human being. So when I started my journey, it was a little bit difficult for me because I was new to the surroundings, as I have been raised up in India. So it was really something like in everyday interaction, I often used to find myself navigating between the space of like, am I different from the people here, or maybe I was kind of deeply rooted to my own self as well. But I noticed that a lot of people helped me, including my professors at the Chicago school. From the first day itself, they told me that you have to make yourself like identifiable, and that the only way you can do is like by networking. So I know, like when I was tied with like I can't work, but I can absolutely volunteer. I can go to a lot of places where I can volunteer, I can build my network. And Chicago school gave me that platform to network with people. So I got an opportunity to represent the Chicago school at World Business Chicago. I was the representative, student ambassador representing the Chicago school. So, in that context, I found myself, no, I'm not different from people here. It's just the context that how we are raised up. Like, there are some of the things which are different, but at the end, the moral and ethical values, I think so, it's same all over the world with students, as well as for, I think, the term humanity. And that is something which we are connected with, the term. And also, like, um, when I started connecting with people, I could find that everyone has their own perspective about India, about the things which had happened in my country. But there was something which I got connected, like few of the cultural things which I got connected with some of my friends, some of the people I met, and a lot of problems and issues which were existing in our, which are still existing in our country, are also here as well. So being an international student, it was initially it was difficult, but as the time progressed and I got to know a lot of people, it helped me to like tell more about my country, more about the things I have grown up, I have shared. And then also, like, I was a teacher back in India. I was teaching students starting from a very younger age to the teacher trainee program. So I had that privilege of working with the government of India. And then I got an opportunity here to volunteer with the kids, which like, they needed some help, not in academics, but in other socio emotional intelligence, and the things which I had learned in my country, in my family, the ways of sharing and caring. So which results, I think, a lot of things currently in the world right now, as there we can see a lot of turmoils are going around in the world. So I felt that this is the right thing which I have being nurtured. I can teach people, or I can share my knowledge about what it is exactly, the term that sharing and caring can make a lot of things easier and lighter. So as a student, I could say, like, I have learned so many things which is currently helping me in my current professional setting. And it's also like, when you are surrounded by different cultures, different ethnicity, you can know the meaning of what it means to be a human being. Because we all are different in some of the in any like all other ways, but when it comes to like the survival, I think the most important thing it comes is we are all humans at first, irrespective of where do we belong, what are the scenarios we have been born and brought up, but the existence, the survival, it is important to identify ourselves as human. So this is something which I thought that it is a better expression which I take it forward while progressing as a from an international student to a professional right now. And hopefully I can spread my positivity of being a human first rather than identifying myself as someone from a different like a country or nationality.
Thank you, Pooja. So, hello everybody. I'm Lilith Cheung. I reside in the occupied Duwamish land, also known as Seattle. I've been here for about 13 years. Previous to that, I was born and raised on the occupied Ohlone land, which we know as the Bay Area, and lived in Santa Cruz for quite some time, where I was an early childhood educator. I did a lot of advocacy work. I primarily had a focus in early intervention, and did a lot of work with, gosh, thousands of families at this point of my life. It's been about 25 years worth of time between that and being a human rights activist. As you can see here in some of my pictures, yes, I don't know if you can see this one in particular, if the pictures of all of us are blocking it, so let me know. Yes, I have faced off with riot police. This was solidarity against hate. I am behind the flag here, Defend the Sacred. I also lived in Standing Rock for about 4 months when we were active with No Dapple in alliance with our Indigenous relatives. And below here is Abolish ICE, where I organized and occupied the downtown Seattle office for 4 days in solidarity with those who've been taken by ICE in 2018. At that time, we had about 550 missing children, which only half of that number of children have been reunited with their families, and the other half to this day is still unknown. I lived in Costa Rica for about 3 years up until my husband passed away last year. And I've published Brave Paper Son, which is a tribute to my dad, who immigrated to the United States during the Chinese Exclusion Act, along with my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So I'm first generation born here in this country. And I welcome everyone to our talk of what it means to be a global citizen. I've traveled to a number of countries myself, lived abroad, and have learned a lot just by sitting with local people and hearing their stories. And I really feel that these stories are sacred. They bring a lot in terms of knowledge, spirit, education. And so I hope you enjoy the stories that we will be sharing with you today. But I would like to start. Are there any questions that anybody has at this time that Marthew, Pooja, or Megan can answer? Are there any questions in the chat, Megan? No? Okay.
No.
So we want to give time for that. The last time I did an International Education Week, we ran short on time for questions, and the feedback was we had more we wanted to ask. So I'm going to start with Marthew here. How does our view of tourism, globalism, and colonization shift?
Yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, so viewing tourism, globalism, and colonization through an intersectional abolitionist lens. So intersectional meaning recognizing how our various social identities, gender, race, religion, etc., how that affects oppression, privilege, discrimination, things like that. And then the abolitionist lens through the lens of care, dignity, uh, again, people having their needs met. So viewing tourism, globalism, and colonization through that lens comes with the understanding that I was talking about earlier of how the carceral system and the prison industrial complex in the United States are intertwined with military industrial complex and US imperialism abroad. And, I was talking earlier about how the Black Power movement, Chicano Power movement, indigenous liberation movements have been saying this for decades. My next documentary, which we're going to talk about a little later, Seeds for Liberation, centers the Free Palestine movement and makes the connections through former Black Panther and Black Liberation Army leaders, Stop Cop City leaders, La Raza leaders, who talk about the connections that have been there that they've been talking about for decades. And so as a global citizen, as a white man, it's important for me to understand that I have a responsibility to understand how I show up in spaces and to understand how I would be perceived likely in spaces, and to approach those spaces with a sense of humility and respect and care and paying attention and listening and understanding, because uh, the history of people who look like me doing harm in places from, like I said, 6 miles down the road in South Central to Palestine to uh, Chicago, parts of Chicago, there's a history of people who look like me doing harm. And so it's really important to show up with that respect and without the entitlement that often comes with being a tourist in other spaces. And so one of the things actually Lilith and I were talking about before was even choosing not to travel to certain places. For instance, Hawaii, a few years ago with the fires, the indigenous people, the local people there were saying, don't come here. We don't want tourists here. It's causing problems. Uh, you're taking away our resources and things like that. And so I've, consciously chosen I'm not going to travel there. If it's a work related thing and there are, organizers there who want and need me there versus doing something virtual, I'll do that. And again, it's in the capacity of being of service, of deferring to the folks who are on the land, whose land that is, whose culture I am a guest, I'm being welcomed as a guest into. And so, that's how I approach tourism and globalism, recognizing again those systems of oppression, how I would be perceived, and how important it is to be of support and make sure that the people who need to be centered, right, the locals, the indigenous people, are centered, and what they have to say is most important in those spaces.
Thanks, Matthew. And it's really so true. I'll get to my piece here in a moment, but with the discussion that Matthew and I had is about how, as global citizens, are we centering the local people, the people which are part of the land? Even here in the United States, do we listen to the voices of our indigenous leadership? And what does that look like? Even things that are happening here in America with indigenous sovereignty, with murdered and missing indigenous women. There's a lot to unpack. And so, in part of being a global citizen, we almost have to unpack those things within ourselves of, why am I traveling to this place? Or even here internationally, coast to coast, right? Like there's different cultures across the United States as we know it. because it's so large, right? That there's different elements in each state, and from West Coast to East Coast, even there's differences. So when we're traveling to these places, do we know whose land we're on? Like I said at the beginning, I reside on occupied Duwamish land. And for anybody who doesn't know, Duwamish is still fighting to be federally recognized when their people have been here since time immemorial. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Megan.
Well, thank you, Marthew and Lilith. Yeah, Marthew, that your comments really struck a chord with me because just thinking about when you're entering space with communities, I know specifically when I was in undergrad, um, I uh, I completed my degree in African Studies and Pastoral Studies, and with a minor in Gender Studies. But one of my professors, Professor Kathy Heskin, who is now retired and living her best life, she always told me that we don't serve to or for people, we serve with people. And that always stuck with me because I feel like a lot of the times when it comes to service or doing service immersions or studying abroad or anywhere folks may travel to, whether it's domestic or globally, sometimes, especially I would say as Americans, we come with a savior complex. And I've noticed that. And when I leaned more into womanism and Black feminism in undergrad, just understanding about the wholeness and needing to maintain wholeness within communities and working to dismantle various systems of oppression, whether it's racism, sexism, ableism, and things like that. Just understanding that, like I said before, there are people before us that have already done this work, right? And so I think it's important to always lift up the work of our ancestors and of our elders. And so your words really resonated with me, Marthew. And so I think, for me, as I try to um, utilize and try to embody a womanist and Black feminist lens, just always when I enter a space, is this where I'm supposed to be? Do I have permission to be in this space? And how am I contributing to the work that has already been done? And how can I learn from those who have gone before me to try to help and continue that work? And so I think that's just a couple of the things that I always think about when it comes to just being a global citizen and just trying to work with others to try to create safe spaces and sustainable spaces.
Thanks, Megan. Pooja, would you like to share with us, please?
Yes. So, as an international student, I'm always talking about as a student because I'm still a student, technically. So, as an international student who has come all the way from India and living and learning in the US, so this shift in how I understand tourism or globalism, colonization, felt something very intellectual and deeply personal because a lot of things there were a lot of moments where I was constantly navigating between assumptions, biases, and also like cultural experiences. There were different cultural experiences, and I felt moments where my identity became like a cultural experience for others, or sometimes it may be sometimes it was misunderstood, or it was taken very simply. But these experiences have pushed me to look more closely into global systems, like how I share these interactions, or how I hold and tell my stories about my cultural experiences. So, sharing one of my current experience, which is not at all a good experience, while I was discussing with Lilith, Matthew, and Megan during our talks earlier for this session, that being a global citizen, earlier it was like a dream, an American dream, which everyone sees who lives abroad and who has a dream to come and stay in this country. So I'm one of them who sees that American dream. And I still see that dream, and I still feel that I'm struggling, and I'm working hard to sustain this dream. But during my visit to India in July, I was like taken to a secondary inspection at the Chicago O'Hare International Airport, just because like I did not belong here. So I was taken into a secondary inspection. I had to give all my documents, my I-20, my the passport, and also my employment card, authorization card. So I felt that somehow it was like something very tense situation for me, but I was confident that I did not do anything wrong while I came to this country, or I was in my country, because I always felt that I stayed in all of the context, and I know Bridget is here. So I always consulted Bridget about any of the situation, any of the things I can do or I cannot do as a student, as an international student. So I was quite confident that if anything is asked, I can reach out to someone for help from the school. And also, like, though it seemed like a little bit frustrating and disappointing to me, but the thing that I stood correct in every sense of the things, as a student, as a abiding citizen of a country. So that made me strong, that if any question is asked, I can answer it properly. But when I view it on the part of tourism, I feel that it can cause a lot of problem. If I would have been a student who has come to United States for the first time being a student, it would not have been a good experience for me. And my the mindset which I came to the country, and I was entering a country, would have been something completely different. But as the ongoing situations are right now, so I felt that it was easier for me. But if I would have been a new student or a new person who is entering the country, I would never have promoted tourism outside. But now, when I encourage some of my friends who are thinking of pursuing higher studies or come here for different work purposes, I always say, like, yeah, if you stand in the correct path, if you are doing your paperwork correctly, US is a better place compared to other countries in the world. But you have to be strong enough to face all of these situations, all of these uncertainties, and you have to have that strength and be confident in your mind that irrespective of what it is coming in front of us, you have to stand strong, and you have to have that patience that uh, I can deal with this with calmness and patience. You don't have to panic, but you have to stay strong with all of the things that I'm doing my correct things. I'm on the right track, so I can deal with it.
Thank you, Pooja, for sharing that story. And, again, when we were all talking about this, the thing that went through my mind was just like, oh, how scary to have to experience that when you've done nothing wrong. And that really stands out for me, because right now, as we know it, ICE has taken about 600,000 and into custody, where they're in detention centers or have been deported. And there's one report that I read not too long ago that in February, 200 were sent to Costa Rica, 80 of which were children, and 28 still are in Costa Rica. And it was a mix of cultures and people who were deported, and all but the 28 have been sent back to their homelands. And 4 out of 7 judges in Costa Rica found that what the United States had done in deporting these human beings was illegal. So just to put that into perspective, that we actually have a lot of people similar to Pooja who are actually being taken off the streets and deported. So it really is a challenging time in our country, and with the risk for folks like me, even though I'm American born, the current administration has threatened to even try to deport people like me. I'm like, where are you going to send me? I was born here. But who knows? They're actually moving forward in trying to coerce tribal leadership into building detention centers on reservations currently. And my understanding from tribal leadership is the answer is no. So for me, leading into this, as I said earlier, I lived in Costa Rica for 3 years before my husband passed away. And what really shifts for me, and I'll just share this from a very personal place, is that when I first went to Costa Rica, one of the observations that I made was some really horrid behavior by tourists towards local staff members at the hotel, in the streets, just obnoxious entitlement. Like I'm here paying my dollar, so you have to serve me kind of attitude and privilege. And in conversations that I had with my husband before we were together or married, he worked for a hotel. And here he was only getting $2 an hour. And in Costa Rica, there's really, they have a 40-hour work week, but they'll be worked overtime. So he was actually working during high season close to 100-hour weeks. And the overtime is time and a half, but that's only $3.50 an hour. When I did the calculation on average of the hotel that he worked for, they were bringing in close to 4 million on 180 days. And here my husband was working himself to death and being treated terribly by a lot of the visitors that would come. He would tell me a lot of stories of the treatment that he would receive by a lot of the visitors that were at the hotel. And so for me, I mean, I've traveled since I was a child internationally, and it brought up stuff for me. As an example, when I was in my early 20s, I went on a choir tour throughout Eastern Europe. And we sang in some of the most gorgeous cathedrals during this time. And one of the arguments that came up was I had told some of the folks that were older than me, here I'm in my early 20s, that when we entered the cathedrals, especially in Eastern Europe, that we cover our shoulders, or we wear something over our heads, that this is culturally appropriate for the region and that it should be respected. And I got a lot of pushback. I mean, I literally had primarily white, Eurocentric pushback of, well, it's hot. Why should I? I was like, somebody else's homeland. That's why. And so I took it to the director because there was about 100 of us on this choir tour. And I took it to the director where at first she was like, why are you even bringing this up? And I said, because this is respectful when you're in someone else's homeland. And it took actually complaints from the cathedral leadership to say, hey, you guys can't be in here if your shoulders are in, tank tops, or you're not dressed appropriately to be in our spiritual places in our country. And it took them to say something to our choir leader to actually do something. And so she made an announcement to everyone that this is what we needed to do. What she didn't say is that it came from the people. So I got the flack from everybody, which I'm like, all right, I don't know what to tell you except when you travel, you need to think about where you are and you need to think about the culture of where you are and how that aligns. Do you go into somebody else's home, even when you're within your own neighborhood, and act disrespectfully? It's the same concept. So for me, my global shift and understanding of globalism and colonization was emergent through my 20s. Colonization comes in different forms. We look at colonization like we do here in the United States. The United States as a government would not exist had they not enacted genocide upon an entire culture from east to west and pushed down through Mexico. And if you look at the lower states all the way through the West Coast, technically that's Mexico. Who is the most persecuted right now under ICE are Mexicans. So we have to think of it from the historical aspects, moving forward into what we see present day in the repetition of history, right? History is repeating itself. Moving on, another form of colonization that I discovered when I was in Costa Rica, and that's living, firsthand within community, the fact that my husband's Tico. I learned a lot about, tourism that happens in Costa Rica. Everyone thinks, oh, it's just beautiful country, it carries 3% of the biodiversity in the world, and the people are so nice. All those things are true. Costa Rica is so small that you can actually pick it up and you can drop it inside of Washington State. At the time that I was there, the poverty rate, and in part due to the pandemic, was between 23 and 26%. Now, I want you to imagine a 23 to 26% poverty rate in Washington State, just for context, right? Right now, the poverty rate is 15.2%, but that's still really high for such a small country. And when we look at that, where is that coming from, right? The previous International Education Week, I had invited a friend of ours, my husband and mine. His name is Leo. And he founded Peta Vida Fighting for Kids, which is based in Jaco, where we lived. And this was his way of mutual aid and uplifting his people, specifically the children, to combat poverty, crime, and the cartel, because the cartel does exist in Costa Rica as well. And this was his way of helping children through the poverty, which, if we do deeper studies around the neurological benefits of martial arts, because his foundation is founded in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but they also do judo, yoga, and meditation, as well as health checks and getting kids what they need for school. One of the things that Leo said to me that really stood out is that if you were to really look at land that is owned in Costa Rica, he said, how many Ticos actually own the land? Very few. And this is one example. So if you look at Playa Hidaria here in Costa Rica, where I have the photo, this is part of 300 acres that was bought by an American who decided that literal generations of Ticos were squatters on land that he bought. So he went in with riot police and attorneys and bulldozed this entire neighborhood, one of the homes of which happened to be my stepdaughter's mother's family home where they had resided for close to 50 years. That's another form of colonization. So the tourists turned into expat, as they like to call themselves. Expat is actually considered a privileged word, right? Who's going to these other countries for a vacation, decides, oh, it's amazing, I want to live here. They buy up the land. Now, not only are they gentrifying the area, but now they've raised the cost of living for Ticos, just speaking specifically for Costa Rica. But I know this also happens in a lot of other areas. I recently spent 6 weeks in Mexico and heard a lot of the similar stories by the local people that I've heard from community that I was in Costa Rica, and also in terms of pay. So in Mexico, in speaking to the locals, they're only making $2.50 an hour as payment, and many times working way more than 40 hours a week. So another piece of that when I was in Mexico that I learned, this photo over here, if folks can't see it, please let me know, because I don't know if with my screen share if we're actually blocking the photo over on the side. So I was visiting the cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula, and in a conversation with one of the locals, he told me that this particular company, Xcaret, which is actually a Mexican company, but invested into by foreign investors. This is actually a screenshot from a video that he had sent me. He said that they had been exploiting indigenous folks in the region around the cenotes, where they're actually creating, for this particular photo in this particular cenote, where they have dug underground to create a cathedral to promote weddings. They're trying to make it more into Disneyland than to come and honor these Mayan sacred spaces. And this is happening throughout the region, where many of the cenotes, you're going to see zip lines, and you're going to see rappelling, and you're going to see all sorts of stuff. A lot of the cenotes are being destroyed because of it. So now the environment's being destroyed. It's also water for local people. So now that's also being polluted. So when we think about the tourism, the globalism, and the colonization in mix of this, my view of it, much like Megan and Pooja and Marthew, as a traveler, how are we centering the people there first, right? It's amazing to go, try different foods and learn a culture and learn the language. But what's our place there? Like for me, I ended up leaving Costa Rica after my husband passed away. A, because it was too hard for me to be there without him. But B, because it's not my home. And I didn't want to be yet another colonizer. Sure, did I have the opportunity to stay? Was I invited by the people to stay? Yes, I was. But only because my husband was Tico. So I ended up coming back to the United States, the place where I was born, to continue the work that I do here with my Indigenous relatives. So I'd like to move on because I want to be mindful of time. Pooja, would you like to share with us international relations and collaboration, mutual aid, and serving community, of what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so as you can see in the pictures, there are some of the smaller pictures, collages, which is from the Oakley Square Homework Help Excel learning, which is like emotional social intelligence learning. So I had the privilege of teaching these kids about socio emotional learning, as well as like I also had the opportunity to be invited to the international talks at the Chicago school. Along with that, I was also invited to share my experience as an international student and how I landed an internship and then a job, a full-time job by the National Louis University in Chicago through World Business Chicago. I was sharing some of my personal thoughts and experiences with students there, how we can navigate from being an international students and like without any experience prior in the country, and how we can build a network here and get connected to people. So overall, you can say like international relations, as well as like I feel like currently I work for Chicago Cultural Alliance, which is a non-profit in the city of Chicago, serving more than 50 cultural organizations. And along with this, I can say like I'm proudly serving communities, not only my own community, but a lot of indigenous as well as like cultural communities from around the world, which are located in the city of Chicago, whether it is museums or cultural centers. So I'm proud that I'm serving them, and I'm working collaboratively with a lot of folks here in Chicago. So I feel that I'm continuing my international experience till now, and also in the upcoming days, I'll be proud to share my experience as well as serve the community, whether it is local or international. It will be an honor to serve the community as a whole.
Thanks, Pooja. So I understand
Yeah,
that.
I'm so sorry, Lilith. We are sort of out of time, actually. We've gone over the hour. I know. If you guys could
I
you wrap
warned
it up?
you.
I know you did. You warned yourself. Would it be possible? I know you guys have a lot more to talk about, but would it be possible to just wrap it up in a few minutes, just so that we can, be
Sure.
respectful of the time?
No, totally understand. Megan, do you want to speed run this? I would like a moment to be able to share the trailer for Matthew's upcoming documentary.
Yeah, this is just a shameless plug to support an organization that I was a part of between 2015 and 2017, Asada's Daughters in Chicago, which is a queer Black woman-led youth-focused organization where we teach about Black radical tradition and the Black Panther 10-point program and honoring the ancestor Assata Shakur. And so just if you all check out the website and just learn more about the history of Asada's Daughters and how we support our youth in the Chicago and Chicagoland area. And also, I've been a part of my sorority organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, for over 11 years now. We have hundreds of chapters around the world where we do international service work. Our motto is service to all mankind, all humankind. And we have 300,000 members worldwide. And I think it's just such a beautiful way for me personally to be able to connect with Black women specifically around the world and doing work and service work with everyone in any community to make sure that they are safe and to make sure that they everything is sustainable for their needs in various communities. So if you want to learn more, please check out again Asada's Daughters and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, just to learn more about the meaning of keeping communities whole and safe, and to make sure that communities can remain sustainable, to protect us against, all these current things coming down from this U.S. administration, that and the things that are occurring right now that really make people feel unsafe, and just making sure that we all can work just to make the world a safer and better place.
Thanks, Megan. So I'll just make this quick. I'm continuing work alongside Pura Vida Fighting for Kids and Hako Guaravida, which is Hako Lifeguards. We've actually started in honor of my husband. They're doing free training for ocean safety and first aid and CPR. I actually have children's books that I've created that are not published quite yet, but they will be soon. And without further ado, sorry, Tanya, we're going there. I would like to share Matthew's trailer for his
The people in house don't want you to know about this, especially right now, especially any of the apps. But I happen to be a weed, not a seed.
If you ask any Palestinian in the world today where they're from, most of the time they'll give you the name of a city or a village that existed prior to 1948.
A land without people for people without a land. This was a complete fabrication. It was a complete lie.
Judaism has been hijacked. And the other lie is that you need Israel to make Jews safe.
Come to Israel. We'll show you around. We'll explain to you why you're wrong. And so I did go. I went a couple of years later, and oh my God, it was worse than I could have ever imagined it to be.
It's a genocide. It's a genocide because every single, institution like Amnesty International, like Human Rights Watch, these institutions have called it a genocide.
Gaza is America. Gaza is a laboratory.
The bombs are still falling. Schools haven't divested.
Justice for Gaza. It's justice for us all.
In the moment like that, we are connected to a broader struggle.
We have the power of the movement. We have to organize our communities to defend ourselves against the white supremacist construct that is the national security state.
There was a massive onslaught and attack on these students at these meetings.
Everybody has to be busy. Everybody has to be adult because they came for us today. They'll come for you tomorrow.
When I think of a free Palestine, I do think of collective liberation. Those two things are completely intertwined for me.
Palestinians, like any other people, just want to live a normal life. Putting in your destination on Google Maps and not seeing a checkpoint.
I often say that there's been a seed of consciousness that's been planted in everybody. When you're asking Palestinians what they want, they literally said, I want to play in a playground. I want to go to school.
I ask myself this question all the time. I wonder why it is so controversial for me to advocate for Palestinian freedom, Palestinian liberation. Why is it so controversial?
Thank you for that, Matthew. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. I think of what June Jordan once said about Palestine, that they are the moral litmus test of the world. And with that, with what the stories that we've shared with you today, I would like to leave with everyone to just think about how all of this is connected, how we're all interconnected, and how we treat each other in how are we carrying our humanity with integrity? So these are some of the links of resources. I'm just going to skip over the how do you become, a member of the Global Distinction Program. But just so folks have some resources based on what we discussed today. And I know we did not have time for a Q&A, and I'm very apologetic for that. But I do want to ask if there is any questions in the chat that we can quickly answer before we sign off.
There aren't any questions, Lola.
There aren't?
But a lot of kudos and hearts and loves went all around.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining us today, and be safe. May everyone just be safe.
Thank you all so much. It was absolutely an incredible presentation. I'm sorry we had to rush at the end. If you would like, it's totally up to you, to send me either the presentation or the links to the resources that I can include for our folks that have registered for this in the follow-up email along with the video of this recording, I would be more than happy to include
I'll send you
all of
the.
that. Please, yes, please
I
do.
will.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you again. I knew this was going to be the best way to wrap up International Education Week 2025, and you did me proud. Thank you all so beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you truly so much.
Thank you.
And if anybody, I'm sure, wants to contact you, you can reach out to engage@tcsedsystem.edu, and we will gladly connect you to our speakers. With that, thank you all for an incredible week. Please have a great weekend. And for those of you who partake in Thanksgiving, have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the days off. And thank you all again. And we look forward to seeing you next year for International Education Week 2026.
Thanks for inviting us, Tanya.
Anytime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.